Okay, I think it's time to get started. Welcome, everybody. I know it has probably been a very long day, last talk of the day, and soon the party, so thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. I will try to make this as entertaining as possible, I promise. And for the next 50 minutes, more or less, I will be talking about culture, national culture, which is a topic that I think it's really, really important, but it doesn't always get the attention that it deserves. And I say it's very important because we are living in a highly interconnected and globalized world where many countries have been rapidly turning into multicultural societies. Before, we were expected to work mainly with people from our same cultural background, but it's not true anymore. In fact, how many of you work with someone that comes from a different cultural background than your own? Raise your hands. Literally everybody, right? And this trend has been further accelerated after the pandemic because many teams have been going fully remote and have started to hire across borders. So this is only the beginning. And the problem is that many times, even those who are more culturally informed, that have traveled the world, that have maybe even lived abroad, struggle with the cross-cultural complexities that affect our day-to-day interactions. Whether you realize it or not, there are small differences in the way that we communicate with each other in what's considered common sense between countries that have a tremendous impact in the way we communicate with one another. So today, my intention is to show all of you an amazing tool that I have recently come across that help us decode and understand better these cultural differences. I will show you many examples, hopefully funny examples, that shows what happens when we come across these differences. And at the end, I will also give you some tips of things we can do to start being better citizens in this multicultural world that we are living in. I know probably none of you care about who I am, but I need a slide where I can show my Twitter account and my LinkedIn account so that you can all connect with me. So I'm going to present myself anyways. My name is Diego Garcia Lozano. I'm a software engineer, 28 years old. I was born, raised, and educated in Argentina. And 4 years ago, I made quite a radical change in my life because I decided to move all the way to Norway, so quite far away from home. And there, I've been living since then in a city called Stavanger. For those of you who don't know it, it's a small city in the southwest coast of Norway. It's a very beautiful place, really beautiful, especially the 2 or 3 days a year when it doesn't rain and you can actually see the sun. Amazing place to be. Now, my talk got accepted in Porto, and I was like, yes, I'm going to Southern Europe. I'm going to get perfect weather, and it has been raining since I arrived. So it seems to be following me, but what can I do? And Stavanger is known for being the oil capital of Norway, but I've been working in a green tech company that manufactures EV chargers called Easy. We have been the fastest growing green tech company in the whole of Europe, and we have the best home charger in the market. So if you bought an EV and you're looking into buying a charger, you know who to call. But yeah, that's enough about me. We can get started. And I would like to get started by defining what's culture, what we understand by culture, national culture. And here, if you decide to Google the term or ask ChatGPT what culture is, most likely the first term that you will come across is this definition by a famous Dutch social psychologist whose name I will not even try to pronounce, but it's written small there on the bottom if you want to read. And I really like this definition because of 2 reasons, mainly. First of all, it has the word programming in it. So it's a developer talking at a developers conference, so that's perfect fit. But secondly, and now seriously, is because it highlights 2 of the main aspects of what culture is. First of all, that it's a collective group phenomenon. it's not something that you can spot on individual people. So maybe you sometimes, at some point in your life, met someone from let's say, Norway, and you could quickly detect what are the specific traits or the personality of this individual person. But there's no way that you can extrapolate his personality to the rest of Norway. If you take it one step further, maybe at some point you went on holidays to southern Spain, and then most likely you met a lot of Norwegians or Norwegian families traveling to the south of Europe. And then probably you still, you spot that there were common traits in this group of friends or these families, but still you cannot say that that's Norwegian culture. So you need to really take a step back and see the whole big picture of the Norwegian society to start talking about culture. But still then, that's not enough, because culture is it's important to notice that it's a relative term. It can only be measured in comparison. So to understand what's the culture of a place, you need to look at the very big picture of a very big group of people, like Norwegian society, and compare it to another group of people, let's say the Portuguese society. And only then you will start noticing what are the characteristics of this culture. So group phenomenon that can only be measured in comparison. It's relative. And before I continue, I would like to make two clarifications, because talking about culture is a complicated topic and sometimes a little bit dangerous. I say it's complicated because many times we are not aware of the unique traits of our own culture. Culture is like the story of these two young fish that are happily swimming in the ocean, and they come across this older, wise fish that asks them, "Oh, hello, boys. How's the water today?" And the two fish look at each other and say, "Water? What the hell is that?" So if we have been swimming all our lives in the waters of our own culture, we will have no idea how it is like, because we have always been there. We don't know what are the unique traits of it. It's only when you gain some perspective and you travel abroad or spend some time abroad, when you get out of the water, that you start noticing what are those unique traits. So when I moved, I started noticing, okay, yeah, Argentinians, we are more like that. I see it now. So maybe I say things now about one of your culture, and you say, I don't think that's true. It could be true, but I am wrong. But keep in mind, it could be this the reason as well. And the second thing I want to clarify, and the reason why I say talking about culture is a bit dangerous, is because we have a very deep defensive instinct towards our own culture. So talking about someone's culture is like talking about someone's mother or sister or brother. So for example, I can say that my little sister, Sofia, she's super annoying, and then I can't stand her anymore. And that's totally fine, because she's my sister, and I'm allowed to say that. But if someone else comes, let's say a friend of mine, and tell me, "Oh, I met your sister, by the way, and you're right, she's not so annoying," I will be like, "Watch out. You don't talk like that about my sister. I can talk about her like that. Maybe my little brother can talk like that about her, but you definitely can't." And that situation is the same with culture. So me, as an Argentinian, I feel I can talk as bitterly and as openly as I want about Argentinian culture, but the moment anyone else from a different country starts talking about it, all my alerts will go on, and I will be ready to jump and defend it. The problem here is that today, in this talk, I will have to talk about different cultures, different than my own, because that's the whole point of the talk. So if you don't like something of what I say, please keep an open mind. Don't start throwing things at me. But it's not that serious. I will not say anything that bad, so don't worry. Anyways. So now, next thing you might be wondering is like, okay, Diego, you said you are a software engineer, cloud developer. Why are you talking about culture? And yeah, the reason is that I'm not an expert in culture, definitely not. But the reason I'm talking about it is that I made a mistake. I made a mistake a couple of years back in the middle of the pandemic. I was working in Norway. We started having all these online meetings. I was recently moved in a new apartment, and I started noticing that everybody had these bookshelves full of books behind them. And I started thinking that all that what people could see behind my own camera was the PlayStation I bought with my first salary. So I was a bit embarrassed. I was like, OK, time to do some online shopping for books. It's the pandemic anyways. So I went ahead. I picked up 1, 2, or 3 books that I really wanted to read. And just in case, I bought like 30 more, just because of what the Amazon algorithm recommended to me, or how the cover looked like, you know? So I saw that good-looking book, yellow cover, has the word culture in it, map, it shows the picture of a map. And maybe it was because I really, really wanted to travel at that time. It was the middle of the corona. I was hoping to travel soon. That I thought that this book was going to be about traveling, like a Lonely Planet type of book, where they show like different countries and what you can eat in different countries and different beaches and yeah, this type of travel book. But then I started reading it, and I very soon realized that it was not what I expected. It was a business book. And I was thinking, oh no, another business book. This is going to be so boring. But yeah, if I had known who the author of this book was, I would have known what the book was about, because Erin Meyer, the person who wrote this book, is considered to be one of the top 50 most influential business thinkers in the world. She's a professor in the second most important business schools in the world, only after Harvard, and she has written 1,000 things in the New York Times, Forbes magazine, and so on. I didn't know that at that time, but now I know. But luckily, I gave it a shot, continued reading, and it was an amazing book, very eye-opening and very entertaining to read. So I really recommend it. I will spoil most of it right now in this talk, but still, you could go and get it. And what Erin Meyer presents in that book is a tool that she created called the culture map, which consists of 8 different scales in which behaviors, scales that represent the behaviors where cultural gaps are most common. So you have one scale for leadership styles, you have one scale for communication, one scale for ways that people like to give and receive feedback across cultures, and so on. So 8 different scales. We will cover them soon. I will not mention all of them. And along those scales, countries are put along those scales, and by comparing the position, the relative positions of those countries to one another, you can start to understand how the differences in their culture can affect the daily collaboration of people between those countries. So as I said, it was a really, really interesting book to read. I gave it 5 stars. But to be honest, I kind of continued with my life. That was it. It was a good book. Kind of forgot about it. Until at some point later on, I went on to have dinner with the group of people I was working back then. So I was working in a Norwegian company with a Norwegian team. Everybody was Norwegian except me. And we were collaborating with a team based in Serbia. So Norwegian team plus me went out to dinner. And the Norwegian colleagues of mine at that time started saying, hey, have you noticed that the Serbian guys, every time that they want to ask something work-related, they never, ever, ever go straight to the point? They will always start by saying, hey, hello there, how is it going? And everybody was, yeah, that's so true. Yeah, they do that. I have noticed the same. And everybody was agreeing. And while everybody was bonding over that, I was there in a corner, hiding myself, because I was thinking, I think I might have done the same a couple of times, I believe. So, yeah, I was a bit embarrassed at the time, but at that exact moment, I realized that I have read about this. It's like, wait a second, I know about this. I know why this happens. I know why Serbian guys do that. That's closely related to one of the scales of the dimensions of the culture map, the book I just read by mistake. So what's this scale about? Here we have countries that are more task-based or relationship-based in the way they approach, in the way they decide to build trust relationships, how they build trust with one another. So in the task-based countries like Norway or the US or Denmark, the Netherlands, they build trust through business-related activities. Business is business. Business should never be personal. And you will only trust the other person if that person is good at work, if they are reliable, if they deliver in time, and if you can trust the work they do, then you will trust that person. Then on the opposite side, you have cultures like the Serbian one or the Argentinian one that are more focused on relationships. So if you go to a new job, the first thing you will try to do is to bond with the other people. You will try to get to know them. You will stop at the coffee machine and ask them, how are you doing, what do you do, blah, blah, blah. Go out together, get drunk, eat together, and so on, and so on. So if we can trust, if we get to know the other person at a deeper level, if we like the other person, like personally, then we will trust them at work, and then we will work well together. And this also, so that's the reason why we are kind of wired up in our brain that even if you are at work, you shouldn't go straight to the business affair. You should first focus on the person, say, hey, how are you doing, blah, blah, blah. And when that initial talk is done, then you can move on and say, hey, could you review my PR, or could you run the migrations? Because if you ask that directly, we think it's wrong. And this also affects the way you can do business, because in the relationship-based countries, if you are going to have a client meeting and you want to sell something, you shouldn't go straight to show the numbers and, oh, yeah, you will save this much money, and we are the best customer service, and like this number talk all the time. In the relationship-based countries, it's much more appreciated to have a dinner with the client, get to know each other, drink something, and then if something is going on there, then maybe we can move on to the numbers, which is the complete opposite in the task-based places. I could talk about this for a long time, but I think it's better if I show you a quick example of the differences between these two different approaches. And for that, I would like to show you a video of the best TV show of all time, The Office. And if you don't agree, you're wrong. And in there, you will see Steve Carell, acting as Michael Scott, trying to close a deal with a client. And he's going to sell paper to this Lackawanna County mayor, and he has a very relationship-based approach, whereas his boss, like the woman that's with him, has like the typical business approach that's very task-based from the American culture. So you will see the difference there quite clearly.
I thought we could start by going over the needs of the county.
Right. Well, Lackawanna County has not been immune to the slow economic growth over the past 5 years. So for us, the name of the game is budget reduction.
Awesome Blossom.
What?
I think we should share an Awesome Blossom. What do you say? They are awesome. You want to, Christian? Awesome?
Sure.
Okay, it's done. Actually, Megan, may we have an Awesome Blossom, please? Extra awesome. Now it is done.
So,
Hey, I heard
if you have
a very, very funny joke the other day. You want to hear it?
Christian, you don't have to listen to this.
It's okay, I like jokes.
Okay.
Just the one.
Just one joke? Okay. Well, if it's just going to be one, I will think of a different joke. Hysterical. Could you start that one from the beginning?
Sure. There's a transcript between a naval ship and a lighthouse.
The first guy says, well, I'm an astronaut, so I drive a Saturn. And the second guy says, well, I am a pimp, so I drive a cheap escort. And the third guy says, I got you both beat. I'm a proctologist, so I drive a brown probe.
Oh, no! Oh, my God, that's funny! I almost had Awesome Blossom coming out of my nose.
Excuse me, can I have a vodka tonic, please?
Hey, that's delicious. I love it.
We would probably be upset with ourselves if we went this whole night without talking business. So, Dunder Mifflin can provide a level of personal service to the county that the warehouse chains just can't match.
Well, we are out to save money.
What's the bottom line?
That's why I wanted a signal between us, so I wouldn't have to just shout nonsense words. That's her fault. Did somebody say baby back ribs?
I don't think Christian has time for that.
I have
Well, I mean,
time.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my
baby back rib.
Well, yeah, I think the difference in the approaches is quite clear there. Needless to say, Michael Scott closed the deal with the person. And now you're probably wondering, okay, yes, fair enough. We like different stuff. We are different, all of us. What should we do? Because some people like one thing, some people like other thing. What approach to follow? And there, my advice for those who come from more relationship-based cultures like myself, if you're doing written communication, I will not tell you to stop asking people, how are you? Because I cannot do that myself. I cannot force myself to do that, even though I know the other people don't care at all, but I can't. But the advice is at least write it all together. Say, hello, how are you? I need you to review my PR in one message. So at least the other person knows what you really want, and they can decide if they want to engage in the small talk or not. And the other way around, you're a relationship-based person working with people that are more task-based, is don't take it bad if people are actually want to only focus on work. If they only ask you, hey, Diego, can you review my PR? Diego can do this, Diego can do that, without asking about you. Because that's fine. Maybe they just don't want to misuse your time. And what I have learned, being in Norway for 4 years now, is that these type of questions do come, just in a different order. So they will ask you the work things, and once that's out of the way, they will be like, oh, by the way, how are you doing? So it's kind of the same, just flip around. And for those that are more used to this task-based approach, and business is business, and so on, my only piece of advice is that perhaps give it a shot sometimes to be a bit more relationship-based, more relationship-focused. Because even if you are in an only task-based culture and all your colleagues are the same, giving it time to build deep relationship with your colleagues, it will pay off in the long term. You will, I promise you will work more efficiently in the future, you will collaborate better, so maybe if you take a bit more time now, it will pay off in the long run. And now you are probably thinking, yeah, this was a funny video. I know like what you're saying is kind of interesting, but I don't buy it because everyone is different. Doesn't personality matter? This is like what you are showing me is too black and white. And the truth is, yes, you're right. Personality does matter. People are different. Like, in fact, the video I just showed you, they are all American and they have different personalities. But the reason Michael Scott is so funny is because he's an outlier. The actual way of doing business is the other way. So people are different, but it's important to know how this culture map was built. Erin Meyer, the author, made a lot of questionnaires and interviews and so on, got a score from people, and started plotting those scores. And of course, each individual answer from a specific country was different to one another, because everyone is different. But a normative pattern starts to emerge with a little hump. And that hump, where the majority of the answers fall, that's the point that you see in the map. But it's important to know that the whole range is what's acceptable behavior in one culture, but it depends on each person. So it's not either personality or culture, it's both. So now we can move on to the next scale, communicating, and I really, really like this one because there are so many examples here. So in here we have two types of cultures. We have those that are more direct and those that are more indirect. So direct cultures appreciate when the message is delivered clearly, in a simple way, concise. There is no hidden meaning. There's no room for misinterpretation. You have to be as straightforward as possible. Again, in this side, you have the US and some countries like Norway and Denmark and Netherlands and so on. And then there are some countries or cultures where indirect communication happens more often and is actually appreciated. So a good communicator is the one that can say things without actually saying it, the one that can imply things. So there is a lot more pressure put on the listener than on the one delivering the message, because you have to be ready to pick up the hidden meaning of what that person is trying to say. And you see here that I call them direct and indirect because it's easier for me to explain, but they are actually called in the book high context and low context. And that's related to the opening talk yesterday in the keynote. You remember that in the opening keynote, she said that context sets the rule for the language game or the communication game or something like that. And that's the reason why, for example, if you don't come from the Portuguese context, you will never understand what the word saudade means. You have to be Portuguese from a specific time, grow in that culture, and then if you know the context, you will know the meaning. And if you wanted to communicate with someone with whom you share very little context, like people in 10,000 years, and you want to tell them that there is nuclear waste here, you have to be very, very simple with your message to make sure that they understand you. So you will see that cultures that are very high context, like China or Japan, are very ancient cultures, very old cultures, that they have had a long time together to develop these other rules that they can pick up without explicitly saying them. And on the other side, you have countries like the US or Australia that are societies that were formed quite recently with people from many different backgrounds and different languages. So they had very little in common. They had low context in common. Therefore, they needed to communicate in a simple and straightforward manner. So that's one possible explanation of why you have cultures that tend to be more indirect and some that are more direct. Again, I could spend a long time, but a short, funny video I think is better. So here I will show you how an Irish person who tends to be more indirect offers cake to a German person who tend to be more direct. And then you will see all the combination, Irish to Irish, German to German, German to Irish, and so on. And you will see how they understand each other.
Would you like a slice of cake?
Oh my god, that looks delicious. No, I couldn't possibly. No, stop.
Just have a nice look. Be a little bit naughty.
No,
Go on.
no.
Okay. Take it.
Fine, you're forcing my hand. Okay, fine, I'll take it. Kuchen? Ja, bitte. Bitteschön. Dankeschön. Kuchen? Oh my goodness, that looks delicious. No, I couldn't possibly have a slice of it. Wait.
Would you like a slice of cake?
Oh, ja, bitte. Oh, okay. You're very confident. Rude, really.
So yeah, those are the problems, some of the problems that arise when you mix people with different communication approach. And yeah, I found more examples, and I can see myself in many of these. So this is a tweet that I saw some time ago that could have been literally me yesterday under the rain. So this British woman was waiting for the bus under the rain in Germany, and a colleague came like, hey, can I pick you up? No, that's fine. And the German went away. It's like, what? Yeah, she said, no, it's fine, but if you were in the UK, you would know that means, oh, no, actually, to ask 2 more times, and then I'll maybe say yes. And it's the same in Argentina. And I found this example in the book. You have a Spanish person who, in comparison to a Chinese person, is more direct. So the Chinese is like the most indirect in the world. And this Spanish manager is asking this Chinese employee if he can come to work on Sunday. And the Chinese employee says, yeah, I think I can make it. But the problem is that it's my daughter's birthday on Sunday. And the Spanish person says, okay, enjoy the birthday, like afterwards. But the Chinese person did not understand that. So can you imagine that this person did not show up to work? Because the way the Chinese person said yes, even though he literally said yes, the rest of the conversation around is telling you, no. And the exact same situation happened to me. It was almost the same conversation. The first time I made this talk, this keynote. I was working for my previous company. I was in the camp planning committee, and we were supposed to have a keynote on Saturday. And 1 week before, the speaker that was supposed to come, canceled on us. Don't remember why. So my boss at that time asked me, hey, Diego, do you think you can prepare something to talk about for Saturday? And I was like, yeah, maybe. I don't know if I have something, but not sure if people will find it interesting. Also, I don't have that much time. I'm kind of busy. Perhaps what we can do is that I prepare something more or less, but we continue looking for people, and if we don't find anyone else, then I guess I can do it. Which in Argentina is like 100%, I don't want to do this. But my boss said, oh, fantastic, you can do it. Oh, that's great. And I was like, what? But yeah, I was already deep in, so I decided to do it anyways, and luckily it went well, and that's the reason I am here now, giving the talk in lovely weather Porto, so can't complain. But yeah. So here, what can we do? For those that are more indirect in the way they communicate, if you're dealing with either with people that are more direct than you, or people that are also indirect but from a different context, you have to make a big effort to be more simple and more direct. So forget about what you do back home, try to be more direct. If you're talking with colleagues from your own culture, that's fine, but it's not going to work outside. And make sure that you ask questions to validate that people are understanding what you mean. So what you mean is not always what you say, so you have to make sure that they understand that. And for people that are more direct, when talking to people that are indirect, it's basically the same deal. It's like, make sure that you are not listening only to the words that come out of the mouth, but look at the bigger picture. What's the context? What's implied here? Is there a hidden meaning? Is there some layered message I should be paying attention to? Yeah, so moving on, things get more complicated because we have people that prefer to be direct in the way they communicate and people that prefer to be more indirect. But that's not the whole story, because there is a variation when it comes to giving negative feedback. So here again, you can be direct or indirect when giving negative feedback, and it usually matches the style of your normal communication style. So if you are a direct communicator, usually you are direct at giving feedback and the other way around. But it does not always match. So for example, the US is a culture that, as I said, is very direct at communicating, but when it comes to giving negative feedback, they like to wrap it up. In fact, they are the ones that popularize the sandwich method, in which if they want to give you a negative feedback, they will not give you the negative feedback. They will give you first a positive one, then the negative one, and then another positive one, so that it's easier to swallow. So, but they only really wanted to give you the negative one. They're just wrapping it up. And yeah, and there are same with some other cultures. I think like the Israeli culture is very indirect communicating, but direct giving negative feedback and stuff like that. So there are variations there. And something that it's very normal for those that like to give, something I forgot to mention. Also, those that give direct negative feedback many times are okay at giving it in public. It doesn't matter, really. If you give negative feedback in public and private, they don't care. But those that are indirect negative feedback, they always do it in private, never in public. And something else that the indirect negative feedback people do is to use a lot of downgraders. They will not say, this is a catastrophe, this is completely wrong. They will say, oh, I think this is slightly wrong, there's a tiny mistake here, and they will try to downgrade it a little bit. And the British apparently are the masters of the understatement. In fact, and we'll show you last video of today, no, almost last video of today, a British pilot that was flying a plane on top of a volcano in Indonesia in the 1980s or something like that, and all 4 engines of the plane turned off because they flew through an ash cloud of the volcano. So very dangerous situation. And let's see how this master of the understatement communicated this to the people traveling there.
The crew continues throughout this entire descent to try to relight the engines. They take turns trying each engine to see if one would start when the other one wouldn't. But initially, none of them will start. However, when they're putting fuel into the engines are actually igniting. They're just not starting up properly. But that has a secondary effect of showing flames coming out to the back of the engines. And this means that the poor passengers that are sitting at the back of the aircraft, if they were looking out of the wings, would be shown of a display of 4 engines on fire, which would be absolutely terrifying. And with this in mind, Captain Moody decides that he needs to make a PA. Right? He needs to say something to the passengers to reassure them. And the PA he makes is probably going to go to the history as one of the most understated PAs ever made.
My intent was to get the attention of the CSD and the cabin crew, and I got the attention of the world's press. And I didn't intend to do that, but I did. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Eric Moody again. We have a small problem in that all 4 engines have failed. We're doing our utmost to get them going. I trust you're not in too much distress. And would the CSD please come to the flight deck? And that little bit at the end is a signal in British Airways for the cabin crew to prepare for a crash landing or a ditching.
Yeah, imagine, I would be terrified. You can see flames coming from the plane, and the captain is like, oh, there is a small problem, a tiny problem. Hope you're not in too much distress. And in fact, there is such a big difference in the way of communicating feedback between the Dutch, who are like very direct, and the British, who likes to play it down a little bit, that this Anglo-Dutch translation guide has been going around for a while to help them understand each other a little bit. And I like it because I can see myself here also on the kind of British way of doing things. When I do pull request reviews, I see something that I really don't like, and I will be, I have a small nitpick here. It's not a big problem. Maybe you didn't even need to change it, but have you considered doing this and this and that? So really play it down, and in my head it's like, I will not approve this, ever. So yeah, good to know about these differences. What are my some tips to do here? If you are very direct in your way of giving negative feedback, the first tip is to at least keep on doing it, but at least do it in private. Don't do it in public, because that's really bad for someone that's not used to it. At least do it in private. And using 1 or 2 downgraders now and then doesn't hurt either. And if you tend to be more indirect on giving feedback, at least you should let the other person know what's your methodology for doing it, so that you don't confuse them. So if you like to give 2 positive ones and 1 negative one, but you want the person to actually put more weight on the negative one, say so. Say that at the beginning. So put on the table how's your way of doing things, so that the other person can pick it up. Because if you don't say anything, and you give a Dutch person 2 positive ones and 1 negative one, that's good. That was a good review, but that's not what you meant. And if you are, again, expecting the negative feedback to come a bit more diplomatically, and they don't do that because they are from some culture that they are not used to doing that, again, it's good to know that there are cultural differences, actually, so that you don't get angry to this person, so you don't think that this person is mean or toxic towards you. So don't take it personally. The next dimension or scale is about leadership styles. So we have, on one side, societies that really appreciate egalitarian or whatever is pronounced, equal way of leading. In this side, you have all the Scandinavian countries, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, the Netherlands. And in these countries, the boss is one more of the guys. He doesn't like to stand out, or she, of course, and he will dress normally. He will not have an open door policy, because he probably doesn't even have a door or doesn't have an office. He maybe sits in the same open floor plan as everybody else. He maybe goes walking to the office or by bike, and doesn't have a Mercedes and so on. And that's what's valued. There is not that much power distance between the employees and the leaders. And that's what's expected, and that's what people like. And organizational structures are usually flat. You don't have that many levels. And it's also completely okay to skip communication levels, kind of. So if you want to talk to your boss's boss's boss, You can go and do it. It's no problem. It's totally fine. But on the other side, we have hierarchical cultures, hierarchical way of leading. In here, the boss is almost like a god-like figure. It's very important, and he is apart from the rest of the employees. He has the corner office on the last floor. He drives an expensive car. He wears suits, and it's not okay to talk directly to him. You have to only talk to your direct boss or someone under you, and that's it. Not allowed to skip communication lines and so forth. Here, something that happened to me when I moved to Norway, maybe it's like a kind of lame example, but Argentina is not that hierarchical, but it's also definitely not as egalitarian as the Norwegian society. So there what happens to me is that whenever I come across the CEO of my company, I get super stressed because to me he's like a big figure. So maybe he's coming down there and say, "Oh, hello, Dio, how are you?" And I am like, "Oh, hi," and like run away and try to hide in my office because he's like this godlike figure to me, even though it's a simple guy. Like you can think, okay, bosses or CEOs are sometimes scary, especially if they look like the stereotypical like old person that's angry all the time. But this is my CEO. He wears shorts and is like 35 years old, and he can't scare anybody. But to me, that I'm used to more hierarchical structures, I still get a bit intimidated. I don't know if you recognize that guy. He's the Dutch prime minister, has been the Dutch prime minister. I think he's going to stop being the Dutch prime minister soon, but has been for like 15 years or something like that. And he goes by bike to work. For me, that's mind-blowing. He's the most powerful person of one of the richest countries in the world, and he dresses normally and goes by bike to work. Maybe for you it's normal. For me, it's shocking. I don't know. Yeah? It's the fastest way in, yeah. But still, they can get a helicopter and fly in there. Should be driving a Mercedes and wearing like expensive suits. Yeah, but in the Netherlands, this is what's appreciated. This is like the normal way of leading. You are just a facilitator among equals. So that's expected. And one might think that, yeah, this leadership style, I like it more. This should probably work everywhere else. But try being the prime minister of a hierarchical country or culture and going by bike to work. People will not like it. People will think that you are disrespectful, that you don't take the country seriously. So what works in your country will probably not work for sure in another country. And just to show you, this is again our CEO with some of the top leaders in the company, and they have an office that's smaller than mine, and they're sitting on the floor, probably making some big decisions. This is, again, for me, shocking, but Norway, completely normal, egalitarian, flat culture, everybody's equal. And the next one, scheduling. I know this one everybody has experienced this one. Because here we have societies that have a more linear perception of time. They like things to be organized and in time. There is no room for sudden changes. Everything has to go by protocol. There can be no distractions, no delays. The deadline has to be followed. And then you have countries that have a more flexible perception of time. That maybe if a distraction comes, they will do it, even though you had deadline to do something else. It's no problem. This seems to be more important now. Maybe you have a meeting, but you're a couple of minutes late, and it's fine. And yeah, they adapt better. If they have a better marketing, they will say they're more agile. But due to this different perception of time, this makes a difference on how late is being late. In Norway, which is a linear time culture, if you're 1 second late, you're late. There's no way around it. The meeting was at 10, you came 10:01, you're late. Some other countries, like France or Argentina, that's debatable. It's more up to each person how late is late. And if not, let's see this video of an Italian guy that moves to the US with his wife, American wife, and they're arriving a couple of minutes after to a meeting. Let's see what he thinks.
Late right now, right?
No, but it's 10 minutes. 10 minutes, it's normal.
But you're late.
I'm not late.
10 minutes is late when you're
10
past
minutes
it.
is around the acceptable hour.
And I agree with him. 10 minutes, come on. It's around the acceptable hour. So, yeah, if you pay attention on the scale or the dimension, usually countries that are more on the emerging, developing economies tend to be more flexible time than linear time, like Germany or Japan or the US are usually more linear time. And one possible explanation is that we live in a very chaotic world. So we can't really plan ahead that much because our environment is changing all the time. So if you're in Buenos Aires and you have a meeting in 1 hour, maybe you leave in time, maybe you leave 1 hour and 10 minutes before because you want to make it in time, and you decide to take the metro because you check and there are no strikes, and that's the fastest way to get there. And then you get to the metro, and there is a strike that they haven't announced. So you're like, okay, but at least I have some extra time. I will take a taxi and go to the meeting and can still make it. And then you start riding your taxi, and there is some protest on the road, and they are blocking the road. So no cars are moving. And still, you have some time because you plan ahead, you try to be on time, and there is a crash ahead, and a helicopter blocks the transit. And yeah, so life is a chaos. So it's really hard to predict. It's really hard to be in time. And that's why people are a bit more they give a little bit of room. So 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's okay. In fact, for example, we don't have bus schedules. You just go to the bus stop, and when the bus comes, the bus comes. Even if maybe we have a bus schedule, but nobody looks at it because it's pointless. So here, my piece of advice is do in Rome as Romans do. So I am now living in Norway, linear time culture. They like to be in time. It's possible to be in time, so I am in time. So that's the best advice I can give. And if you meet with people that are from a flexible time culture, or you are in their country, and they arrive 5 minutes late, don't get angry or anxious. They will come eventually, and 5, 7, 10 minutes, after all, is not that bad many times. And we're reaching the end here. We have the persuading scale. And this is about how people like to convince other people about things and how they like to be convinced yourself. So here you have some societies that value a lot the use of examples and practical things. Example, what can you do with something? They don't care, they care, but not that much about the theories or principles behind things. So again, I use the US a lot because it's a culture that everybody knows, I feel, but there, they will tell you, if they want to teach you something or sell you something, they will tell you, you will be able to do this, this, and that. This technology is so good because you can do this, this, and that. And many times they don't explain how that is built, or what are the principal use, or what's the theory behind it, because that's second. It's not as important. It's the second thing. And in principle, first countries like France or Argentina, we do it the opposite way. We build up our arguments, we develop the theory, we explain why this will work, and at the very end we say, okay, now that the foundation is understood, this is what you can do with this, right? The problem is that if you use that way to present something to people that are more application first, they will be all sleeping at the end of the presentation. So it's a bit hard here to know what to do. So this is how we develop our arguments in principle first countries: introduce, build up, present the opposing ideas, and at the end, the conclusion. And just to give an example, there's an example I like about how we learn languages. So in principle first countries, it's very normal. I went all my life to English school, and we spent years and years learning grammar, vocabulary, present simple, past simple, first conditional, second conditional, all these rules. And only at the very end, we were talking more and listening more. And that's why many times we have more or less good grammar, but you can see that the speaking is not that good, or the listening is not that good. It's because we focus a lot on the theory and not on the practical use of it. And there is a famous app made by the US that teaches you languages as well, that has a quite intense way of reminding you that you need to do your homework. It's Duolingo. I don't know if you know it, but the way this app teaches you a new language is like this. Let's say you never had a single class of Spanish in your life, and you open the app and you start the Spanish course, and this is like the first thing you will see. It's like, how do you say cheese in Spanish? And you're like, I don't know. You tell me, but okay, guess. By the picture, oh, it's el queso. Okay, move on. And you have a lot of exercises like this, like to use the language. They will not teach you any grammar, nothing, no principle. Use, use, use. And by the repetition and by doing it every day, you actually start to pick it up. And you kind of implicitly start to learn the rules because you have put it in practice so long that you start to learn it. I have almost 1,000 days of streak in Norwegian, so I'm very proud to flex that. So yeah, very different approaches at teaching stuff. And here, again, another example, Refactoring, book by Martin Fowler. Very first sentence of the very first chapter is, I hate when people spend so much time in the theory, blah, 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 I get bored. So that's why I will start this book with examples. The theory will come afterwards. So that's the way they like to do it. Here, the tip is know your audience. So if you're presenting for people that are more from a principle-based country, focus more on the theory first and then the examples. If it is application first, examples first, then theory. The big problem is that usually this is not possible because we have a mixed audience. We have people from both places, so it's like, okay, what do we do now? Well, I think to do there is what I at least try to do now, which is to present a little bit of theory and one example. People are starting to get, application first people are starting to get sleepy and bored, one example, and continue with the theory, and then another example, and so on. So try to mix it up a little bit. Now, I'm running out of time, and also I didn't find any good memes or videos for these two, so I will go through the last two scales quite fast. We have the deciding scale, which again is very similar to the leadership scale, and almost like a full match, because egalitarian cultures are usually very consensual in the way they take decisions. So they hear to everyone's voice and kind of vote and say, okay, yes, let's do this. And hierarchical culture are usually top-down. What the boss says is what's done. But there are a few exceptions here. So for example, Japan is a very, very hierarchical culture. The boss is like a godlike figure and so on. But when making decisions, they are consensual. And you have the difference, a difference on the other side as well, again with the US, which is not as egalitarian as Scandinavian, but pretty much egalitarian. But when they have to make decisions, it's very top-down. What the boss says is what the boss says. We're going to do that. And the last one is about disagreeing, like how much societies like to confront each other if they don't agree on something. Of course, in confrontational, you have the French people. Yeah, they like to confront if they don't agree with stuff, and they think that that's positive for the group. Like actually having that heated debate is positive for the group because you can reach some understanding. So that's why they like to do it. And then you have cultures that prefer to avoid confrontation, that even if you strongly disagree, you just stay quiet because you think that if you openly disagree about something, that will hurt the group dynamics, and that's not good. So that's it. Those are the 8 scales. And before finishing, I would like to sum up a little bit and tell you what are like the 3 main takeaways that I want you to have from this talk. First of all, I think that the most important thing is to acknowledge that cultural differences exist. And I think it's important to put the topic on the table and talk about this with our teams and our companies and try to find what are our cultural blind spots. Like we shouldn't ignore it. It shouldn't be like a taboo topic. We should bring it up and talk about it. How are we different? It's only then that we can start to get to know each other better and start working better together. Secondly, and this could be a little bit counterintuitive, because I spent the last hour talking about group phenomenon and group behavior and so on, but it's very important to not stereotype people. Like, please don't live here and go outside and say, oh, you are Norwegian, you will be task-based, or you are Argentinian, you will be like that. It's like, no, please don't do that. That's wrong. But at the same time, you should not assume that personality is all that matters. You should not say, oh, people are different, it's no point learning about culture because at the end people are different. But if you do that, if you decide to ignore the cultural differences, what you will end up doing is to judge people through the lenses of your own culture. And that's as bad or worse. So next time that, for example, you take a technical leader in your team to a client meeting because you're trying to make a sale and you want this technical person to back it up, and that technical person stays quiet the whole meeting, maybe don't think straight ahead that that person is shy or didn't come prepared. Maybe what happened is that this person comes from a hierarchical culture in which you're not supposed to talk unless your boss gave you the word. Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe that person is not shy or came unprepared. Maybe she is just used to the boss giving the word. If you have a boss that is very direct in giving you negative feedback and you're not used to it, you shouldn't think, like, it shouldn't be the first thing that you think that that person is mean or an asshole, because maybe that's not the case. Probably it's not the case. What probably happens here is that that person comes from a culture where negative feedback is actually appreciated because that helps you improve and become a better version of yourself. And last but not least important, if you have a Latin American colleague, perhaps from Argentina, and that person arrives sometimes 5 minutes after a meeting, remember that it's not that the person doesn't value your time, maybe it's just that he comes from a flexible time culture. Thank you.